I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 14th, 2019 of the Willington Conservation Commission meeting. After calling this meeting to order, the first item is, we always list citizens' time. Is there anyone here for something not on the agenda? They just want to talk about something related? Guess not. Okay. All right, we're on item 3, approval of minutes for October 24th, 2019. Are we in a position to approve? Yeah? All right, could I have a motion therefore to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0, 0. Okay, item 4, approval of conservation restriction, 20 Corporate Drive, DEP file number 122-576. Is there anyone in the audience for this item?
Doesn't look like it. So I can speak to this. So as you'll recall, the commission issued a permit for an order of conditions for the construction of the apartment building at 20 Corporate Drive, which
Yes.
is approximately half done. I think they have occupancy permit to occupy the right-hand side if you're looking at the building from the south.
Yes.
So they're doing it sort of in steps. But as part of the permit that you issued, they were required to place a conservation restriction on the property, or the area of the property behind the building, which includes the vernal pool. So it's a fairly substantial area, wooded, with a vernal pool between Corporate Drive and the building. And so I've distributed by email the draft. It's a fairly standard conservation restriction.
Okay, do you feel the conditions in it are restrictive enough to be protective of the property?
Yes.
All right. Anyone have comments on it? On the left, yeah. It's okay? All right. Ed, anything?
Nothing.
All right, so we need just a motion, is that correct for this?
Correct, and actually, I need you to sign it, and I didn't bring it, so I'll have to have people stop by and sign it.
Is it in the office?
All right, so let's have a motion. Could I have a motion to approve the conservation restriction for 20 Corporate Drive, DEP file number 122-576? Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. All set. Okay, next we have a request for extension, General Walker Estates, Dartmouth Road /101 Francis Wyman Road, Waypoint General Contracting, Burlington Wetlands Bylaw Permit. All right, is the proponent here for this? Have a seat. Well, before we do anything, why don't you just introduce yourself and state who you're affiliated with.
Okay. My name is Ed Champy. I'm one of the principals at Waypoint General Contracting.
Okay, with Waypoint General.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Do you want to say anything? You're the guest.
Well, I appreciate that. We're looking for an extension. Part of the reason is that when we were building the road, it took almost a year to get power to the road. So it delayed. So we had the first 2 houses built, and they were finished. And then we waited 9 months for power before we could sell them. And with that, we kind of redirected some of our planning, and that's extended our timeline, which we're asking for an extension.
You're asking for a 3-year extension?
I'm not sure what the time frame was from my office, but
Okay.
3 years would be sufficient.
All right. John or Eileen, do you have comments?
So just to refresh your memories, this was a bylaw-only permit because of an isolated wetland on the property. The project as approved was a cul-de-sac extension off of Dartmouth Road, and that's the portion of the project that they've been working on. And it also includes 2 houses off of 101 Francis Wyman, so the demolition of the 101 Francis Wyman with 2 houses up there, and none of that work has been done. The house hasn't been demolished. So the cul-de-sac has been extended, and 2 of the 4 houses on, is it 4? Yeah, 2 of the 4 on Dartmouth have been built.
All right. Do you have any reasons for concern or to not grant the extension?
So from the wetland permit, there, we've gotten fairly regular inspection reports. We've had site visits. We've had some minor issues. I know the planning board has issues with some of the work that was done after sign off on occupancy permit on the house on the right, the end of the cul-de-sac on the right. And that was actually constructed somewhat differently than on the permit. The driveway was in a different location, and the grading was a little different than what was approved on the order of conditions, or the wetland bylaw
Do they need to
permit.
file for an after-the-fact amendment because of it, or can we handle it as built?
It's up to you. I know there's probably abutters in the audience who you may want to hear from before you make that decision.
Right, okay. All right, first we'll talk to the abutters, but first see if anybody here has comments. Indra, anything? No. All right, Gail? Bill?
Well, from what I'm seeing here from the planning board, a couple of issues that would pertain to our permitting would be the driveway runoff has now been changed and is going onto neighboring properties. And there are unconnected gutters that were intended to be going into the drainage system. So those items would pertain to issues related to our permitting.
Change in grade, too.
The change in grade, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Ed, anything on this?
Nothing to add.
All right. All right, yes, you want to
May I
comment?
comment?
Yes.
So regarding the drainage, so the driveways were located as they were on the permit drawings, and those driveways were installed. One of the neighbors had been concerned that the runoff was running off to their land. It downgrades before it comes back up, so we had hired Steve Dresser, who was the surveyor on the project,
Yes.
to reapproach the project to address where this drainage was going. And he's come up with a new plan, which is it's just crushed stone along the edge of the driveway, which allows the drainage to then reach the leach field, which is in the back, which is substantial. Within that also, the gutters that are not going into leach field, a fair amount of the runoff from this house was designed to run off in the front yard, and some of it was to reach the street. So the gutters that were exposed aren't necessarily not correct. They're just draining off in that area, because the bulk of the roof and the bulk of the runoff was taking, the drainage in the rear yard of these particular lots has an easement for Burlington, reaching out to it, and it's sizable. So we went back through the process and had Dresser, and we thought that the driveways were very close. There was, when you lean a half an inch in the wrong direction on a 12-foot pitch, and it takes water in the direction that you didn't intend. So we're now going back and trenching along the side of the driveways to make sure that water reaches the back. The neighbors' concerns have been with the site. We unfortunately purchased the site after it was approved. And had we known the interaction with the neighbors in the town, we would have never bought it. So now we're left with a site with neighbors and a town, and we're the only party that wishes we weren't here. But we are here, so we're trying to finish. With that said, we'll place that drainage in where it belongs. It will then take in the back. Now, with respect to 101 Francis Wyman, those lots originally they were putting a small cul-de-sac up there, and that's how it was approved to get the frontage, because there were insufficient frontage for two lots in that parcel. So from what we understood, and this was supposed to be completed fully prior to us purchasing, and we missed a bit of it, which was that the zoning board of appeals had approved that they be narrow lots to avoid the cul-de-sac. Now there's going to be two driveways in. The lots are roughly 75 feet of frontage, which is insufficient and required zoning relief. So we purchased the site, and then we realized, okay, that has to go back to planning board now and remove the plan for the cul-de-sac, because you have the variance now to just have two driveways coming in.
Right.
So we went back to do that, because our intention partially was, are we going to sell this land and just leave? Or are we going to build this site? So we had a buyer for the land. We go back to the planning board, and they were saying, well, until you finish the drainage on the two that you built, we don't want to readdress. We'll leave the zoning in place that you get the relief for the two front lots. However, we don't want to address those two until you finish the drainage. So with that said, we have the hurdle of finishing the drainage, which we're fine with. And then, at that point, we can go back to the planning board to complete the process for planning on the two lots at 101 Francis Wyman. And during the interim, we have the lot at what we call 6 Dartmouth. and 4 Dartmouth. 3 and 5 were sold. And, you know, we understand the perspective of the board, and we fully respect your position. And we're just trying to finish a project.
And get out.
Yeah, literally.
Okay. All right, I understand. I think I understand your situation. All right, how about from the neighbors? Anybody want to say something? Sure. Why don't you come up? Mr. Miller, give your full name, and then the microphone is yours.
Hi, I'm Dave Miller, 19 Gloria Circle, the direct abutter to this property, this project. First, let me say that this project, since day one, has been a nightmare and a fiasco for all of us. I find it laughable that Mr. Champy here says they were delayed all that time because of lack of power getting in there. We saw power in there way before, way early. And if you talk to the planning department, I think you'll get a different story as to why that's delayed. It's been over 2.5 years since they broke ground, and they still just have 2 houses there. And the problems that they did were all self-inflicted. The report that you got from Kristen Kasner today, after the occupancy permits were issued, and the property was signed off, they came back and they raised the grade, as you saw, 2 to 3 feet in the backyards over the infiltration system. And that was something that should not have been done after the property was signed off. The gutters that Mr. Champy say, one of them's maybe near the front, but one's on the side by the deck. That's not going to run off to the street, not the way the driveway is pitched pretty severely towards our property. As far as I'm concerned, I'd like to see that put back the way it was originally supposed to have been, the way the plan said, and not work around them.
Wait a minute, put what back originally?
For instance, the downspouts are supposed to be tied into the infiltration system. Now, let me just to give you so I'm not just saying, oh, this has been lousy because nobody wanted this, give you 3 types of things that have happened over the past 2.5 years. The number of construction hour violations were so myriad, so frequent, and so egregious that forced me to actually completely rewrite our general bylaw regarding construction hours. I had to completely rewrite it to clear up ambiguities and make it very clear what was going on to protect ourselves because it was happening so frequently.
So the language wasn't clear, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
And it got passed by town meeting and
Well, it
approved by...
sounds like you decided to do something about it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And it got, like I say, it got approved by town meeting and
Okay.
approved by the Attorney General. On a minimum of 5 instances, there were fires that were started in the cellar holes, and they were burning up construction debris, and the fire department had to be called out each time to put the fires out. So they never even got the message after the first time or the second time. There were 5 times that happened. There was at least one time when there was a loud abusive argument. We heard the contractor and his son having a very loud F-bomb argument going out, and the police were called, and the police had to come out to calm things down. So these are just a small sample of the things we've been living with over the past 2.5 years.
Were those items before or after Mr. Champy's involvement?
Some of them after. Some we've had some recent construction hour issues.
When did you take over the property, sir?
I don't remember the day that we bought it. We do a fair
Roughly.
amount. We've been there 2.5 years, let's say.
Okay.
To respond, I guess there's a couple things. One is, there were some complaints to the building department of what time we were turning trucks on. We generally, our operations in our facility, we build about 200,000 square feet a year. So these houses are 4,000 square feet apiece. It's a relatively, unfortunately, it's a small portion of our business. So, but we do have operations manual and we do have strict bylaws. And we actually did occupy and work out of one of the houses so that we could actually keep a close eye on the project because there was some issues going on. So we turn trucks on at 7 a.m. If they turn on at 6:50, it's a problem for us, and we understand our neighbors' problems, and we try and make them ours. I wasn't there for the someone burning scrap wood in a trash barrel for heat. I wasn't there for that, but I did hear about it. So I'm not denying that what my neighbor is saying is true. I'm just saying that we solved it. I mean, I don't think any of these problems have taken place for the last 18 months. I think that for the first 3 months starting, people starting trucks earlier than they should have, I believe it did happen, and I believe we solved it. I believe that the trash barrel burning scrap wood did happen, which is appalling, but it did happen, and we solved that. We try and respond, and I think if you talk to the building department, you'll recognize that our office, we answer the phones, we respond, and we're serious about what we do. Right now, where we are is we're left with 6 Dartmouth, which is a vacant lot, and we have 101 Francis Wyman. We'd be happy to sell it to our neighbor, but we either have to finish the project, and if it leaves, as it stands, it's not really, it's kind of sufferable to a certain extent. So we're just trying to finish.
Mr. Miller mentioned something about reconnecting gutters the way they were designed in the plan. How much of an issue is that?
Well, Steve Dresser has issued a plan that he calculates the stormwater, you know, the.
Right.
So we have a new plan which doesn't show that.
Right.
But it's completed. He's stamping it. It's been difficult enough. He's a small office. He has a lot of work. So we've been pushing hard ever since we got the pictures from the building department or whomever sent them to our office to solve that problem. So we fully intend to solve the problem, whether the houses are sold or not. We feel obligated. So if those drains need to be connected, or if as they are is sufficient, but what we do know is along the sides of the driveways, we do have to put crushed stone and some perforated pipe running out to the back of the property. And we're comfortable with that, and we will do it.
The thing I want to say is, because of all the problems and issues that have been with this project, I don't want to give them any benefit of the doubt. I don't want to see you grant an extension until and unless the planning department and the building department have said, yes, we're happy with the resolutions of the issues. And because at this point, they are not granting any extensions, any permits, they're not allowing anything else to proceed until things are resolved. And so until they do, I respectfully ask that you keep the same hold on until you coordinate with them before anything proceeds.
Okay, let's clarify something. If the permit runs out, it requires a new notice of intent doesn't it, starting from scratch?
Correct.
Yeah, so that's the problem, that in our particular business here, if we adhered to what you said, that essentially this whole thing would drag out again, and he would have to refile and go through the public hearing process and so forth, and would need a new notice of intent. The basis for which commissions grant an extension is not as detailed as what you're presenting. It's usually, has the work begun? And the obvious answer is yes, the work has begun. Are they in gross violation of the permit, repeated violations of the permit, willful violations? Again, I didn't hear that, unless someone wants to make the case that that's the case, for a denial of an extension.
What kind of violations are you talking about? The ones I just mentioned, or are you talking about a different kind of violation?
I'm talking about conservation. We have a permit. There's permits, and those are the violations I'm talking about. We don't regulate the starting time, and we don't regulate the burning of the wood. Those are unfortunate circumstances, and I would think the planning board would be more interested in that, but that's just not in our purview. We just don't deal with that. Same thing with construction noise. That's not us. So that's where we are. Did you want to say something, sir?
Well, with respect to the other portions of the project, so right now, 101 Francis Wyman is being held based on the fact that we solved this drainage problem. So I think that's a pretty sufficient motivation. We're motivated to do a good job, whether we're being held up or not. Regarding 6 Dartmouth, we're free to build that as we choose. And the house next to it, which is 4 Dartmouth, our plan is just to paint it and sell it, and we're not going to knock it down again. So I was just clarifying some of the comments that my neighbor made.
Okay, I'd like to now turn it to the commission. There are some issues with respect to drainage and perhaps stone being proposed and things like this. What we have done in the past, we have held a public meeting during which we have an entitled minor area engineering change. You have the option of denying the minor engineering change and going with an amendment after you review it, or you have the option of approving the minor engineering change. Do you have any comments on what I just proposed before we debate?
No, but I'd just like to make one comment. So
Yes.
if the order, the order of conditions is actually now officially expired. They got their request in before it expired, but it expired on October 31st.
Okay.
And the general rule is if you get your request in before it expires, that'll carry you over until you actually take action. If you were to not extend it, then even the work that Mr. Webb is suggesting would be a violation. They wouldn't be able to go out and be doing excavation for trenches or whatever for the driveway. I mean, they would have to cease all work.
Which would not be in the interest of the neighbors.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I would need to see Steve Dresser's
Right.
redesign, and
That's
then
why
and then you can make
I'm
a
suggesting
decision
an
on.
agenda item for a minor engineering change, and then you can decide whether to grant it or not,
Right.
is the reasoning I'm throwing
Yeah.
out there. So on the left, Andra, comments?
No, I think I agree with that, with the minor changes, engineering.
Well, we'll decide whether it is, but put it on the agenda for a minor engineering change.
Right.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Gail, comment?
Yeah, as long as we receive the documentation, the plan, and so
Ahead of
forth.
time.
Yeah, what's proposed, yeah.
I agree. If the design engineer, says that these problems have been fixed or have not affected the operation of the drainage systems, then,
And how they've been fixed.
yeah.
All right, Ed?
In agreement.
Okay. And part of the decision in deciding whether to approve a minor engineering change, as Mr. Dresser proposes, and as comments are considered, is whether the existing order of conditions is sufficiently protective. If things have changed so sufficiently, which is not often the case, to be frank with you, so sufficiently that we have to write new orders of conditions, then we'd either go with amendment or we ask you to file new.
Understood.
But that circumstance is not normal, because you'd have to make a pretty drastic change. Our permit conditions are pretty comprehensive.
Understood.
We can do an amendment after it's expired?
Well, it's not expired. They got his request in.
Right, but I mean, so we still could do an amendment, though, you're saying, in this,
Because
because it has not officially expired.
because it hasn't officially expired because he filed.
Okay.
That's the way I would interpret it.
So you can only do the amendment if you extend it, though.
Right.
You can't,
That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
right. You have to do the extension before you do it.
To allow the amendment,
Right.
all right, that's.
So it sounds like there are some issues to address, and if we don't extend it, then we can't let you even address the issues.
Understood.
So, is there anyone else here besides Mr. Miller want to talk? All right, so, yes.
So here's a suggestion. Typically, you just, as a matter of course, extend an order of conditions 3 years. You might consider doing it substantially less, even something like 6 months, to make sure that the issues are addressed. And if they're not addressed, let the order expire.
Then you could come back to
And then make them
extend it if
file all
needed.
over again.
Right.
Oh, so
That
can
might
we
be
do
a
that?
reasonable,
6 months?
Can we do a
Caution.
year?
It's your call.
I'm not,
So we're looking for the drainage, right? And that's something that should be corrected soon. So I think you can get that done in less than a year.
Well, that's something that's probably weather dependent. I mean, if it snows next
That's
week,
exactly where I was.
Yeah, but it's gonna be,
yeah, so maybe 9 months. 9 months would get you into like June or
all
something
right, so it
like
gives you
that.
more than enough time to get before us and get the
Fair
documentation
enough.
from Steve Dresser.
We agree.
Then, okay, and if the issues are resolved, then I guess you get another extension. That would be,
We would appreciate that, yes.
and then it would be reevaluated, like if there were, issues that weren't resolved or continued problems with drainage, that would be something we'd evaluate.
all right, so does anyone else, Mr. Miller, you have any other comment?
Just the fact, what about the raising of the grade by 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet?
The raising of the what?
Raising of the grade.
Grade.
Grade was
Oh, the
raised
grade.
2 to 3 feet.
And that was not according to plan?
That was not, in fact, that was done after the property was signed off. been approved.
So is that the,
It's addressed by Mr. Dresser, Stephen Dresser.
it is addressed?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Is there any way to get somebody else, like a town engineer, to look at that? Because I know the planning board was going to look carefully, potentially get another engineer to look at it to make sure they agree with Mr. Dresser.
Well, we have to get the material from Mr. Dresser, and we could certainly route it to the town engineer once we get the material. But,
Well, that's what I'm saying is I hate to see you approve something when you haven't seen the plans yet.
well, we're not approving anything. We're approving a 9-month extension for them to get the material from the engineer to us. Okay?
Oh, that's what the extension's for, not for them to continue with any work?
They can continue with some work, but they only have 9 months. They will have to come back for an extension to actually do anything major. They'll need more time.
But the only work that this body is approving is working on the drainage. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. We are approving a 9-month extension for the project. We can't selectively approve certain work. The project was approved. John, help me out here. Is that correct, what I'm saying?
Correct.
We don't have the ability to do what he's suggesting, which is we have an extension for drainage correction only.
No, I mean, if you wanted to, you could let it expire and order him to do the drainage under an enforcement order, but you couldn't selectively pick out portions of the order to extend,
Okay. And so what is your recommendation to the commission
to extend the order of conditions.
for 9 months?
You know, this is my point of confusion. In the decision document by the planning board, there was a two-year clock which ran out, and they have to come back for an extension for that. Is that different than this?
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at, is what is your extension allowing to happen?
You want to take a crack at that, John? I thought I already said that.
Right, so the work that was approved under the original order of conditions is extended
But
for another
conservation,
9.
conservation-related work? That's what's confusing me. What's the
Plan that was-
conservation versus because the planning board has a clock that ran out,
Right,
and they're not going to give an extension yet until they're happy, they're satisfied the problems have been resolved. Now, you have an extension, so I'm just confused. What does one extension allow versus what does the
I
other
can't
extension
speak
allow?
to what the planning board extension, I mean, under the Conservation Commission, they're free to construct houses, continue to, grade, and they could demolish the houses on 101 Francis Wyman under our permit. I mean, if the planning board said, no, that's a different issue, but under our permit, they're allowed to do that.
But however, if the planning board has put a hold on certain types of work because of their.
So even though it's okay with you, if the planning board says no, then they
Right,
say.
and there's different considerations for us versus them. I mean, you attended all those permitting hearings, and I think you probably have a sense that what we do is different than what the planning board does.
Right. Oh, yes.
Can I make one suggestion?
Yes,
I'll give Mr. Miller my phone number. He could just call me. If they call our office, everybody answers the phone.
put it like this, if it helps, I would suggest you initiate a conversation.
happy to
with
do
this-
it.
With him.
This is the first time we've met, but happy to do it.
You haven't met prior to this?
No.
You haven't, Mr. Miller, I'm surprised, you haven't made yourself known to this gentleman?
Well, I've never seen him out there. All I see is Mr. Sacker out there yelling and screaming all the time.
So my job is to run our company.
Yeah.
And although I'm in a jacket, there's a work jacket.
Or we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we build a couple hundred residential units a year, so our office I think that we can, we appreciate the board's perspective on what we should and shouldn't do, but our fellow neighbors, if they, it's unfortunate that his relationship with the Sagas hasn't been great, but his relationship with us can be great.
All right, so I would suggest, it's up to you, Mr. Miller, I would suggest that you take advantage of this man's offer to at least sit down to understand each other's perspective and see if any further resolution can be made. And if we approve the extension and a request that you come back for an amended order of conditions, we'll see what the result is from those discussions that you folks have had as well. Okay?
Yep.
All right, could I have a motion to extend the order of conditions for General Walker Estates under Burlington Wetland Bylaw permit for 101 Francis Wyman Road under Burlington Bylaw Article 14 for 9 months?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? 500. All right, so you heard the suggestion about filing for, at the right time for, to be on the agenda for a minor engineering change, and we'll consider whether to approve that. In the meantime, you folks can perhaps get together and talk about any issues going forward.
Fair enough, thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Miller, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next is 4 Sunnyside Ave, Maimuna Shaikh, DEP file number 122-579. This is a request for extension, and followed by that is an informal discussion of 4 Sunnyside Ave, also the same property, on the driveway layout, same DEP number. So who's here for that? All right, good evening. So, same routine as the last ones. First, you have to introduce yourselves, and I assume you are the owners of the property, and so forth.
Hi, I'm Raheel Sheikh.
And I'm Muna Sheikh.
All right, and again, you get to talk about both the request for extension and and we can do the discussion on the driveway layout if you'd like.
So we just bought the land last December, and then we didn't get permit for foundation till the beginning of September, so we just started construction just this month, which is why we wanted the order of conditions extended so we can continue to build all of next year.
Okay. All right. Okay. John or Eileen, want to give us
Okay.
some comments?
Sure, so this order of conditions expires in December, so in about a month. It was issued, obviously, to the original applicants, so the current owners are not the applicants, so the extension would be issued to the new owners, who we've been dealing with quite a bit. We've been talking to them a lot, and I think they actually have been before the board once for
4-foot extension.
the minor extension to the back of the building on the backside. So the extension is pretty straightforward. They've begun the work, the lot's cleared. As the commissioners who went out there saw the foundations in. There are some minor issues. The tree cutting company got a little rambunctious and cut trees beyond the erosion controls. And I was out there when they were doing it. And the reason they gave was that they had a skidder, and they couldn't fit the skidder in between the Mass DOT fence and the erosion controls because the trees were bent in their way. So
Could you tell me what a skidder is?
it's a big machine that basically pulls logs out of that they've cut, pulls them out.
Why did they need such a big machine for?
So, I mean, they're not like your local tree company, they're like a lumber company from New Hampshire. I mean, essentially, this was,
So they've cleared all of New Hampshire, and now they're,
yeah. So in any event, I think there's going to need to be some planting done in the spring to mitigate the loss of some of those trees along the left-hand side of the driveway going in. Other than that, I don't have any issues with the extension. And I put the driveway change on just informal to try to give you guys a chance to decide whether or not you want to have a request for a minor engineering change or an amendment. So it's really hard to tell from the sketch what they want to do, but basically they want to widen the turn into the driveway to make it easier to turn. There is a bit of there is already a bit of a bend in the driveway at the end, but they want to basically make it wider. We would need like a plan done by an engineer.
Oh, we don't have it by the engineer,
Yeah,
but
this is just a site plan that we have, we're not the owners, just take a look at it.
on like a bigger piece of paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, it's just like it's a sharp turn to get into the driveway.
It's a short one?
A sharp turn.
Oh, sharp, yes.
To get into the driveway, and something that our
Right.
front door neighbor also mentioned is that's where all the snow gets pushed during the winter. So we wouldn't be able to get in or out of our driveway during the winter time, which is why she also
So
suggested.
you're not looking for a seasonal home?
No. So that's why we do have an area for the new wetland relocation, so we just kind of
Oh, I
wanted
see.
to be within new wetland.
Right. So the town plows all the snow right to the end?
Right to the end, and that's where our land starts in our driveway.
And there's not too many? I see. That is a problem. Yeah, just another one.
They want
These aren't all the same.
Oh, they're not?
to, no,
Are they different?
yeah, this doesn't show the new one.
Okay,
This is the existing.
okay.
This is the as planned.
All right,
Oh, I see.
They want to
I
move
see.
it up.
I see.
all right, so to the commission,
As planned, this is the one.
we have 3 issues to consider. One is the driveway layout, second is the extension, the third is what to do about some of the trees that probably should not have been cut.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so let's take one at a time. The extension. Anyone have any comments on the extension? Are you recommending a normal 3-year extension?
Yes.
Okay, could I have a motion to extend the order of conditions for DEP file number 122-579 for 3 years?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. That's one down. Next, the subject, let's do the trees, that's actually easier. I counted like 7 or 8 trees, one was a pretty big tree and so forth, and did you ask for those trees to be taken down?
We just asked for them to clear the area for the driveway and for the house, whatever was within the erosion control, but we didn't ask for anything more
Yeah,
than that.
not the specific ones that you're talking about.
Were you surprised that?
I mean, yeah, we had the surveyors go out and stake out exactly where the wetland started, where the erosion control was, the do not disturb line, so that was all staked out before the trees went to get cut down. So it wasn't something we were expecting to happen.
Okay. Comments from the commission on the trees, what would you like to do?
So you didn't know that they are cutting the trees which you didn't want?
Yeah, we didn't know. We had it all staked out of what was within their boundaries to cut. So they had flags up of I believe blue was a wetland and pink, was it? They had specific colors of what was within what boundary. And then our contractor told them to cut within a specific area of those stakeouts. I think our contractor spoke with you guys too, asking permission to cut down the trees before actually putting up fencing.
Yes, for permission to cut the trees?
To cut the trees within our land that's within the boundary.
The trees we're talking about, did we give them permission to cut?
Not
No.
those
No,
trees,
not
the
those
trees-
trees.
Not those
No.
trees, the trees of the land that we're allowed to
Oh,
cut.
yes, yeah, I get it.
They were asked before we put up the fencing, can we just cut down the trees first?
Yeah.
And those 8 or 5
Sure.
that you mentioned were
Sure.
just collateral, I guess.
All right. All right. Comments, Gail,
Well, I think we,
on trees?
yeah, well, I think the trees that weren't supposed to be cut, depending on, I mean, at least the large ones should be replaced.
Should be replaced.
And are the stumps still there?
Yes.
Those will stay in place, not be
All right.
hauled out.
All right, Bill, you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that, just to, to put in a few trees to replace what was cut. Just another overly aggressive tree company. We seem to have issues with that here and there.
I'm not sure exactly where it was. I mean, I know we have to do the new wetland relocation as well. I'm not sure if it's in that area that it was cut. The tree.
To the left of the erosion control when you walk down your driveway.
It's
There's,
hard to tell whether it was within the new wetland area or not.
No,
It's
Not?
The
Not-
existing.
Okay.
it's further down the driveway.
all right.
Okay.
So, Ed, anything further, or Bill?
Full agreement.
No. All right. So it would be reasonable for you folks to present a small plan on how many trees you would like to plant for to replace the larger trees.
These have to be native trees, not like ornamental trees, so.
So why don't you folks,
They have a list if you contact them.
Good, Eileen.
I think if you work with the staff, you can probably work something out,
They could probably give you some
and
sources of work.
what I would like to ask the commission, can we delegate the approval of any plan they give to the staff?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so work with them, if they're the ones, we're gonna let them say okay.
All right. Right.
Okay? That's number 2. Number 3 now is the driveway layout.
Yes.
All right.
So it's really important, like when you work with your contractor, to, make sure you go over with them the plan and what you understood from our meetings, and make sure they understand the order of conditions, because, ultimately you're responsible, and, if they screw up the work, they're gone, and so you want to make sure that, they're doing it right.
And if you have any doubt, you can always contact
Right.
the staff.
In particular, there is requirement for inspection, and if we get to the end of the project and you're asking for a certificate of compliance, and you did not, the engineer or you did not submit the inspection, weekly inspections when the site is disturbed, then we get into a discussion of whether to assess a fine for those not submitted. When in reality, there's a template that you can even use, and, it would take whoever your engineer is or the contractor not too long to fill it out. All right, so don't let that go, in other words. In other words, read the order of conditions, as Gail said, so there's no problems at the end, okay? Because you want to make sure your contractor's aware of it.
You're paying them, so they should be doing their work.
Okay, so where do we want to go on the revised driveway layout?
I don't have an issue with them rounding that corner. I mean, as it was shown on the plan, it's an acute angle. It would be difficult, especially with snow. It's a dead-end street, and it's very easy to just push the snow to the end, and it would be blocking that. So, and that, the additional curve that you're adding does not seem to be intruding into the planned new wetland restoration area, so I don't see a problem with doing that.
Was there in the original design, was there a plan for like a gravel swale or anything along this driveway? And, no? Okay.
No, because they kept the elevation low
Okay.
because the wetland area may have gone across the driveway.
I don't have any problem either.
Okay, Ed, anything further?
Nothing to add.
All right. Anyone have any comments before Sunnyside Avenue? All right, so are we saying, is the commission actually saying that they can file for either, well, let me ask you, would you recommend that we have them just file as built? That we approve it as a minor engineering change now, or they file for a minor
Yeah,
engineering change?
if your will is to approve it as a minor engineering change, just vote that now, and we'll note it in
And
the,
then it will be as built?
right.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
One question.
Yes.
Don't they need the permission from the planning department for this curving? For the curb?
For the curb cut?
Or department, highway,
Maybe from DPW,
DPW, that's what I
Yeah.
meant, yeah.
but,
That's what I thought,
Just
anytime.
extending it a little bit,
Right.
right? It's not
yeah, I mean, you
changing
might need to
placement.
check with the DPW.
Check with the DPW.
Cut.
I don't see any reason why we can't approve it, though.
No,
Relative to our order of conditions.
right.
All right, could I have a motion to approve the revised configuration for the driveway as a minor engineering change for DEP file number 122-579?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. One question, is the driveway wider than we thought it was going to be?
So it doesn't look like it. I looked at the plans. It looks like it's the same width as on the plans.
So we're okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're all set. You don't have to come back until you request the certificate of
One thing you
compliance.
mentioned is just weekly inspections, correct?
Whatever usually that's what it says while the site is under construction, destabilized.
And
But-
that's something that the contractor would call in and do?
It's filed electronically, right?
Had you talked with them about who was going to do it?
No, so your contractors, you should have your contractor do it. You should tell them to contact us. So one concern we had out there was there were a couple of stockpiles really close to the hay bales, to the erosion controls. And I just looked through the permit. Usually we require them to be set back, and in this case we didn't. But we definitely want him to keep an eye on those so that they don't go over the erosion controls. So he should definitely contact us about submitting the reports.
Okay.
Yeah, it will definitely save you a lot of grief at the end of the process. Okay? All right, so I think you're all set. We got it all done.
Thank you.
All right, nice to see you. Good luck with your project. Okay, next we have request number 7, request for certificate of compliance and release of bond, 4-Page Road, Joseph Ferrara. Is he here?
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good, good.
My name is Joseph Ferrara.
Right. We've
to see you all.
we've talked a few times.
What's that?
I remember talking to you a few times. Okay. All right, so this is, the commission did a inspection. Let's see, who was out there this time? Bill, you were out there. Did you have any issues?
I did not have any issues.
Okay, and who else was out there? I was out there. Ed,
I had no issue.
and I was out there and I had no issues. The site looked good. Eileen, is there any, or John, is there any issues from your perspective?
No.
Nothing more to say?
Well, we tried. I mean, we tried. We had a very small containment area, but we managed to keep within that area, and I'm glad we did, because it was less work to have to fix up after.
The house doesn't have that little cottage feel anymore.
No. No. And I took, down the shed as well, because I know that we had spoken at the last meeting
Right.
that you let me keep it. But the garage is actually big enough to put a snow blower, a lawnmower, some yard tools, so I just took it down. I actually like it wooded back there.
Okay, are you living in it yourself?
No,
No. Okay, so it's sold?
no, I haven't finished it yet.
Oh, you haven't
But
finished?
all of the exterior is done.
Are you planning to live in it?
Well, my wife would like to. My daughter is at college, so her it really doesn't matter. My son plays hockey on the Stoneham varsity team. He would never, the school would have to close for like him to move. He would never want to move from Stoneham.
Okay, well, it's a nice site, obviously, overlooking the wetlands with that
Yeah.
balcony thing you have there. All right, could I have a motion to approve their certificate of compliance for 4-Page Road, DEP file number 122-609?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor? 500. I assume you have no objection to full release of the performance bond?
Nope,
Do you know how much it was?
3,500.
All right, could I have a motion to, for full release of $3,500 performance surety for DEP file number 122-609?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
If you catch some pictures of some wildlife out there, send them to us.
I have a ton of them. I was out there 2 weeks ago. I was walking around the back of the house on my phone, and I looked up, and there were 3 of them grazing in the back. They weren't fawns. They were a little bit bigger, but they're the same. They have the same mother. The mother a year ago had 3 fawns. She had 3 more, and so, but they were a little bit bigger. But they feel very, very comfortable out there. I was walking by, I was able to get close to them, and I just walk around the other side.
All right, well,
They're always out there.
I'd love to see a couple of snapshots.
Yeah, I'll get some to you.
You can just send them to the office. Yeah, and they'll distribute them to everyone.
Sure.
All right, so you're all set. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, till I start dishes.
Okay. So now we are on Drake Road, okay.
Drake.
Something in the water over there. Retaining wall.
Okay, all right. All right, so notice is hereby given, the commission will hold a public meeting during which time we have a request for determination of applicability filed by Daniel Sakari. The commission will take all information related to proposed site work within a 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands at 94 Drake Road. And then we will thereafter issue a determination. The application is being heard pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14, and the application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Good evening.
How you doing?
Good, how are you tonight?
Tino Bonanno, contractor, Bonanno Construction.
All right. And
Dan
you-
Sakari, 94 Drake Road, owner.
Okay, good to see you both. All right, would you like to say anything about what you're doing? You're welcome to do that.
Yeah, we're going to be building a small retaining wall in the backyard and grading his backyard off so that he has more of a playing surface for the kids. That's the idea with a small patio.
Right, okay. All right, comments? Eileen, is this one yours?
Well, just to tell you that we knew there were wetlands in the area from previous filings, so John and I went and took a look. There is indeed some wetland in the back of the property, but it's probably something like 60 feet from the proposed retaining wall.
Okay, so let's see if there's any questions, and then we'll just move on from there. Indra, anything? No. Gail, anything further? Bill?
I just had a question on, it wasn't clear to me when it said, return the walls into the slope on both property lines. What do you mean? Is it gonna taper down to zero, or?
So the property slopes to the back, but the wall will run across the
Right.
backyard this way, and it's just going to die into the slope on both sides.
Okay.
So basically, like, at the tallest point of the wall, it'll be like 3 feet, and then it'll die into zero.
I see.
Okay.
Just kind of fade away, and it's gonna be about 4 or 5, maybe even 6 feet away from the property lines, I'd say at least.
Okay. And any other questions on your part? Do you folks have any concerns?
No.
Okay. Anyone in the audience for this? 94 Drake?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Erosion control, do you guys want a silt fence or anything up before we start?
It's in the order.
Yeah, that's, we're going to review a draft with just a few conditions on it, and then you can feel free to ask any questions.
Okay, so the applicant proposed to construct a 3-foot tall retaining wall extending approximately 26 feet behind the existing house. The wall curved towards the front of the property and was to be filled with gravel and loam and seeded. The work at the rear of the house would be within the 100-foot buffer zone to wetlands. Work occurred within existing lawn. The retaining wall would be approximately 60 feet from the wetlands. And for the purpose of this file, the Conservation Commission made no finding as to the exact boundaries of the BVW on site. It's proposed that the Commission issue a negative determination, which is a good thing. And then the conditions just state that the work is only for the project as described in your application. Sediment barriers shall be installed and inspected by conservation staff prior to any land disturbance. Sediment barriers shall be installed across the property between the house and wetland and forward to the frontage along both property lines. Is that clear? Okay. Staked straw wattles or staked compost filter socks shall be used in this case and shall be installed by hand. All construction demolition materials shall be disposed of off-site in a legal manner. No stockpiling of soil or other materials within 50 feet of wetlands. No tracking of sediment onto public roadways shall be allowed, and if that does happen, the roadways shall be kept clean. No filling or grading on the property other than as approved by this decision. And the rest are the standard, don't dump in the wetlands, don't use pesticides or herbicides within 100 feet of wetlands, and the Conservation Commission or staff or representatives are allowed to inspect the site to ensure compliance with the conditions.
Okay, this is actually fairly routine for a project of this sort. Do you have any questions, though?
Nope, I think I got it.
All right. Any comments by the commission on them?
No.
Motion to approve a negative conditional determination for the project at 94 Drake Road under Burlington Bylaw, Article 14 in the State Wetlands Protection Act.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks for coming in.
Nice.
Line these and pull those.
All right, now, let's see. Okay, notice is given that the commission will hold a public hearing during which time will take information related to a notice of intent filed by Adam LaPon for cutting trees and expansion of lawn at 82 Willington Road. The proposed work would be within the riverfront area pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, which is the Wetlands Protection Act, and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The commission will review all information related to the application and may issue an order of conditions for this project. And the application is available in the Conservation Office for any public review. Hi.
Hi, good evening. My name's Maureen Harold from Norris Environmental Services. Here with me tonight is Adam Lapone. He is the homeowner of the property.
All right, nice to see you both.
Now, the commission may be familiar with this property. This was in front of you for a request for determination of applicability. The commission issued a positive determination, asked that we come back and file a notice of intent, and here we are. We filed a notice of intent for the proposed construction of a single-family addition to raise a structure at the rear of the property, a proposed deck, patio, and shed, as well as to provide a 40-foot no-disturb buffer zone off of the stream bank at the rear of the property. We are providing erosion controls. We are providing rooftop infiltration for the proposed addition. The commission may recall that a number of trees on the property were cut. So we would like to provide some of that area as lawn area. And within the 40-foot no disturb, we're proposing to plant 8 trees as well as apply a conservation seed mix. So essentially that entire area will naturalize and come back. And we're also providing erosion controls that's shown on as orange, colored orange on the plan. And I can open it up to the commission if you have any questions.
All right. That was a very concise summary. All right, so, John, are you taking this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so there's a number of issues for you to consider here. So the project is within riverfront area of a tributary, or essentially, actually the Ipswich River under our bylaw. So it was filed as riverfront under the bylaw and non-riverfront under the notice of intent under the Wetlands Protection Act. I would disagree with that, but when it comes down to it, it has no effect whatsoever on your decision, certainly not on your bylaw decision. So the bylaw, so the River Protection Act under the bylaw and the state regs requires a 100-foot no disturb inner riparian, which clearly doesn't exist here, and probably would be unreasonable to require, because the 100 feet would basically come back to the back of the proposed addition. So one thing to consider is, what sort of protected riverfront area is common in this area, in this neighborhood, along this stream. There certainly are very few places where there's 100 feet of undisturbed inner riparian along the stream, because it's a fairly dense neighborhood of single-family homes. So I think what you're proposing is not unreasonable. A 40-foot area of renaturalized riverfront area. Although I would probably disagree with some of the specific proposals, like I would suggest that the stumps be left there. I would suggest that we probably don't even need a seed mix. There's a lot of bark mulch there from the cutting of the trees. There's a lot of pine needles. There's woody debris. I don't think a seed mix is necessary. I mean, I think that certainly the trees and maybe some shrubs would be sufficient. The seed mix isn't really necessary because there's really no bare ground out there. I guess that's it to start anyway.
All right. So the scope of the project is that in the diagram in red? Is that what's being built
So, yes, that's.
under this application?
Yes, that's what we'd like to.
Okay, proposed deck, proposed addition, proposed patio, and proposed shed.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure what we're talking about here. All right. So, I don't know how to put this. How did the tree company do all this? These were very large trees in a riverfront area. How did that happen? I mean, are you Were you familiar with the riverfront area? I mean,
I had no idea it was a riverfront. Meaning, I have no idea it was, excuse me, let me state that, I had no idea it was a river.
river, and therefore
We
there's a
thought it was,
river.
we thought it was an intermittent stream.
Yeah, but
You still, yeah.
it still may be an intermittent stream. But the thing is, in your narrative somewhere, I don't remember where it was, you make the point that you maintain it's intermittent, but we're asserting jurisdiction anyway. We are asserting jurisdiction, whether it's perennial or intermittent, beyond what the state law requires.
No, I understand.
Okay.
I understand that.
All right, and when the law was passed in I'm sure you probably know this, but I'll just say it anyway.
Okay.
The law in 1996, it was a compromise to go with a perennial stream. It did not mean that the riverfront doesn't have value, okay, whether it is intermediate or perennial. But it was passed as a law as kind of a compromise. It was a subject of discussion. But it didn't mean that there isn't value to the riverfront for flood protection and removal of pesticides and chemicals as it runs off the lawn. And it doesn't mean it's not a habitat just because it's intermediate.
Shouldn't be using.
It's just, so we asserted, when we did these regulations for the bylaw, we asserted jurisdiction regardless of whether it was perennial or intermediate.
I understand.
So I just,
Prior to even filing this notice of intent, I reached out to John just to kind of get an idea of, we knew we needed to restore this riverfront area.
Right.
There wasn't any question in our mind
Sure.
about that, but in terms of what's an appropriate buffer to present to the commission.
right,
And John had suggested the 40 feet, so that's why he came in with
right,
40-foot.
right. And he seems to be sticking with that recommendation.
But just to point out, whether the stream is perennial or intermittent, the trees were within the 100-foot buffer zone to a bank.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what the
Right.
stream status is. Bank has a 100-foot buffer zone. All of those trees were in the buffer zone, and the tree company should have known that to be cutting the trees within 100 feet. Whether the stream is intermittent or perennial doesn't really matter, so the tree company should have known better.
And just to give you perspective on the plan, the 100-foot buffer zone is yellow, and the 200-foot is colored in purple. So practically the entire lot is within the 200-foot.
Right, right, now we understand. And it's obviously not practical to restore a full 100 feet here. Not too practical. All right, so comments from, I guess, so the issue appears to be restoration of the thing and a discussion of what they're proposing. Is that what everyone seems to think? So Ed, why don't we start with you? They're proposing 8 trees, and they're proposing a seed mix, and they're proposing grinding of stumps and stuff like this. Our administrator has suggested that for the purposes of riverfront function, it might be, Gail may want to weigh in, might be better to leave the stumps where they are and leave all the leaf litter and the topography in that area, and not even do the seed mix, because it probably will restore itself and become a naturally vegetative area. So that's what we're considering.
I would kind of recommend the same thing, just leave it the way it is.
Okay.
We did have some thoughts as we were looking at whether that fence might be moved up forward to where that divider line, that 40-foot area is. Is there any consideration of doing something like that?
Because the fence isn't in great shape?
Right.
Yeah. In other words, would you want to move the fence to the 40-foot line and create a riverfront without a fence in the middle?
Just thought.
And the only thing I can say before you answer, grinding stumps is expensive. I just had it.
Well, you shouldn't do it in the riverfront, forget it. It doesn't matter whether it's expensive or not, you shouldn't do it there.
But we just told him not to do it, so he's
Yeah,
saving,
no,
but the
but-
point is he's saving money.
Yeah.
But there is a consideration there with the fence if you wanted to do that.
Would the commission consider any other type of demarcation? I understand the whole point is kind of just mark this 40-foot.
It's more than that, it's a barrier, because we find, unfortunately, lots of times when, grass clippings end up back there and
Lawnmowers
debris,
end up
and
back there.
next thing you know, the lawn's been advanced into an area where it's not supposed to be. So, it's more than just a signpost, but kind of an actual, and it doesn't have to be a like a fence that's, you know, a solid barrier, but something, oftentimes like a split rail or something like that, that people put up to, that where there's no gate to it, so that, you know, you're not putting a wheelbarrow back through it, that kind of thing. Or,
Like a posted rail fence that you can't put a wheelbarrow through.
yeah, something like that, or even like if you planted, like shrubs, like a line of shrubs along there that, you know, had no opening to it, yeah.
Okay.
You want, I mean, you can,
The issue we have is we have 2 dogs,
yes.
and the fence has been damaged over time with trees falling and the tree company. So I think the plan is, I don't know what the plan is.
So you had a good review for them on Yelp, right?
The plan is to make sure that we have an area, so, to make sure that we stay away from that and also make sure that the dogs don't escape.
I see. So I guess you're not planning to write a glowing review of Greater Boston Tree Service?
No, so I'll talk it over. with
Right,
Maureen.
okay, you don't necessarily have to answer tonight, but I think you've heard enough discussion to kind of, ideally,
Something has to be done.
yeah, I think we'd like to have the fence removed if possible.
Yeah.
So, and it's not in the greatest shape.
Well, if it's gonna be removed, but without damaging the bank, I mean, I think that's, you don't want people going out there and digging out, holes into it, and I would think, I mean, John, do you think it can be done without damage to the bank? Removing the fence?
Yeah, I don't know how much work it would be, I don't know if, so it's
Would
a
people go
chain
out there
link
and take out
fence, so
more
it could be in
trees to get-
concrete, yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
we've
so-
removed some of them, and they're most of the,
Yeah,
well, all of them.
I don't think you have to
Yeah.
remove the fence. I mean, I think you know, it'd be nice to have a barrier, just let it be, and, because I think there'd be more damage done to that area, trees that would get, you know, broken or removed in a crew trying to take that out.
So what are you suggesting, that they leave the fence or just remove?
They just leave it, and then, you know, put up some kind of, you know, demarcation at the 40-foot, and with the tree
With the
planting and stuff
shrubs or
behind
something.
that, yeah.
All right, so we'll let them, you guys can, you folks can just talk it over and come up with our proposal. I think you've probably heard enough from us.
It'd be nice to add, if you could, to this, you know, 40-foot, because the trees, I mean, there were a lot of trees that were lost there, more than 8, so it would be nice if some shrubs could be added as well, just to, you know, create a little bit more cover back there. It would look nicer.
Would shrubs be appropriate? Because the asterisk-looking symbol, those are the trees we want to plant.
Yep,
And then the circular symbols, those are the trees that are left,
or existing.
that are existing. So when I proposed the planting plan, I was trying to be about 20 to 25 feet from the existing trees, because the trees that are left are fairly large in that area.
Right,
So
right.
Would you be amendable to maybe a few shrubs in there if you want,
Not instead of the trees, but if, you know, it'd just be nice to have as much planting in there as possible, I guess, that to kind of try to recuperate that
I
area.
think Gail was asking for a few shrubs in addition to the 8 trees.
In addition.
Yeah.
And
Maybe some things that are shade tolerant, that are native, that, like.
And to be honest, I was going to ask for 12 trees, but when hearing what she had to say, I'm okay with what she's,
The shrubs.
with the shrubs too.
Okay.
Along these shrubs, yeah.
So,
And I just don't, now, did we, you know, because they're working in the riverfront, does there need to be an alternatives committee?
Technically? Yeah.
Technically, yes.
So that's something that needs to be part of the.
But the work has already been done. You know,
So,
the damage has
so
already
it's
been
a,
done.
it's a lot that pre-existed the
But they're proposing the addition.
riverfront regulations, so, you know, the alternatives just basically needs to be on the lot. I mean, whether or not the addition could be on the side or the front, or, so just a brief discussion.
Just a narrative that has to be
I can provide
included.
a narrative, but because the entire lot's
No.
within the 200-foot.
No, but it's just required, that
Okay.
there is,
Right, so the point is, like, any addition would be still within the 200-foot, and it
Right.
would still be,
Yeah.
either way, it's still outside the 100-foot, but, yeah.
I think he just wrote your narrative.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so Bill or Ed, are there any other issues on the commission?
I just want to reiterate what I said the last time for our new attendee here. I see two parties at fault in how this came to pass, neither of which is you. First is the land surveyor who actually flagged the bank and told everybody that this only required a 20-foot no disturb. Didn't consult the conservation staff, just said, this is what I know, this should only have 20-foot no disturb. So that was a mistake. And the second biggest mistake, or a big mistake as well, was the tree cutting company, with that as an instruction, cut trees even inside the 20-foot no disturb, which is another, definitely egregious violation. So that's how we came to this point. And I agree with what we've talked about for remediation here. The post and rail fence would be good as a visual demarcation and prevention of getting equipment in there. It's not gonna stop the dogs, but that's not a problem as
Yeah, let's
far as,
put
we don't
chicken
mind the
wire.
dogs in that area, and the fence back at where it is, just shore it up enough to keep the dogs in the yard, that would be fine.
Except we don't want the dogs kind of doing waste close to the riverbank. This is actually goes into the Ipswich River, which people drink, gets treated, but, it'd be nice for pet waste not to be right on the riverbank.
So leaving the fence up helps that.
Well, if you have something that keeps
Yeah.
them at that 40 foot, keeping them out of there, that way you're not gonna have that problem.
I see. Okay.
More likely it gets cleaned up because the next step.
Any other comments? Is there anyone in the audience for this one? This is, the address is 82 Willington Road. I guess not.
So if we could have a continuance, I think I need to clean up the plan and provide the commission with some additional paperwork.
A little bit of paperwork, and that way you're covered. And it sounds like we'll plan to close and issue at the next meeting.
That'd be great.
Which
Okay.
isn't until December 12th.
You've got time.
Okay. And when do you need the information by, Jeff? The weekend?
Week before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
very much.
your lot has quite a bit more sun on it now.
Larry, just to add before you finish that, I think Mr. Lappin was genuinely dismayed and shocked to find that the tree cutting was as bad as it was. And he called the next day to find out what he had to do to get a restoration plan in place. So he's been very responsive about this, I have to say.
Well, great.
Appreciate it.
We appreciate that. Would you pass this over to him? I printed this out for him. This is just a short two-page summary from DEP on riverfront. Sort of summarizes the whole purpose of it. So,
They brought this up, I don't know if they want people.
Thank you very much.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Thanks for coming in. Okay, next is number 10. Okay, notice is given, the commission will hold a public hearing during which time we'll take information related to a notice of intent filed by Brian Roy, Sawyer Contracting, for the demolition of a single-family residence and construction of a single-family dwelling at 58 Beaver Brook Road. The proposed work is within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetative wetlands pursuant to the State Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The commission will review information relative to the application and thereafter may issue an order of conditions. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Okay.
Yes, okay. Oh, thank you. Revised.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Dresser, Dresser Lanson Way, representing Sawyer this matter. Brian Roy could not be here tonight. Gave me permission to speak for him and answer questions. The property is at 58 Beaver Brook Road. The revised plans, while I was coloring up, I noticed I had a layer shut off and the wetlands labels weren't on there. It was probably pretty evident. Make sure that it's an accurate plan for that. The intent here is to demolish the existing house at 58 Beaverbrook Road and construct a new single-family home. The new home will essentially be in the same location as the existing home. The proposed deck being slightly further from the BVW as the prior deck. All construction will be greater than 40 feet from the BVW, and there'll be no disturbance within the 20 foot of the BVW. We have provided stormwater runoff for the roof. We'll go through a gutter system to an infiltration system, and the driveway will be graded to a stone trench, which also ultimately goes to that infiltration system. There is a fence at the rear of the property that they would like to keep and retain the existing backyard if the commission allows. We did do a test hole since the filing to see if the groundwater was sufficient for the infiltration system. We found that it was. The infiltration system itself is designed for a storm slightly greater than 5 inches of rain. Currently, there's no groundwater recharge on site, so we are providing a benefit by doing that. Total disturbance is 8,500 square feet, so we kind of fall under that standard for the stormwater management plan. However, certainly appropriate to do some groundwater recharge when you have the opportunity to do that. So, any questions? Glad to answer them.
Great. Thank you, sir. All right, Eileen? This one
I
yours?
actually don't have much to add from Mr. Dresser's description. It is within it's within the buffer zone to BVW. One of my first questions was going to be where are the flags, but now I see that you have them on your plan. What wasn't clear to me though was what are the changes in impervious area? Because I wasn't sure how big the previous house was.
I'm not sure that did I do? Is it on the plan?
Yeah, you can see it, it's on there. It's within the,
It's about a 600 square foot increase.
I didn't even see that. Right there.
Oh, there it is, right there.
Right there, right in front of me.
Yeah.
And again, that's certainly
Comment
would be
note.
accounted for by the infiltration system.
I don't have any additional comments at the moment.
Want to go to Indra, any comments really?
So you did a test fit, that's what I say?
We did do a test hole, yeah, there's actually a considerable amount of fill out there.
And how much is the depth of the groundwater? Did you find out?
It was about 6 feet to the groundwater.
About 6 feet.
Yeah.
And,
about 5 feet of fill out there, believe it or not. This was likely a wetland probably prior to construction of this home, whenever decades ago that was.
And so the bottom of the storm tank would be about 2 feet,
A little bit more than 2 feet.
more than
Yep.
2 feet? Okay.
Gail?
I think I'm all set.
Bill?
the question I have, I mean, the plan for everything looks good, except the existing fence, there's a gate in it, and it's clear that they've been dumping yard waste behind that.
Yep.
A large amount. That needs to stop, and it needs to be cleaned up. So, part of this project would be nice to clean out that
Yeah, I would
area
assume
if we
you
can.
condition that, and obviously, you know, it's, Mr. Roy's a contractor, so he's building the house to sell, so it's not gonna be the same people living there as currently,
Maybe they can,
currently dumping.
so you said they wanted to keep the fence?
I think they wanna keep the location of the fence, you know.
So maybe they can
use
replace
of
the section
backyard.
though with the gate and take the gate out?
Yeah, I, you know, I don't think they'd probably have a problem replacing that whole fence for a new house and the condition that it's in, but,
That's
you
okay.
Yeah,
know,
it was
we
in
would
good
ask your
condition.
permission to do that because you're technically working in that.
I would not have a problem with replacing that fence in the existing location with no gate. That would be a good solution, and cleaning up what's behind it. That's all I have.
Ed?
I have nothing to add.
Okay, I have two quick questions that occurred to me. The first one is, I'd like to go back to the depth to seasonally high groundwater. The contour, I don't know if there's enough contours, if I did this right, but it looks like it's at 99.5 and the wetlands are at 97.5.
I think they're probably like more like 96 or so.
Yeah, because there's a 90, you have a 98 contour, but I don't see the other one labeled. So is there enough?
A little contour, that would be 96. I don't think it was labeled, but between 3 and, that extends between 3 and halfway between 4 and 5.
Right, that's a 96?
That's a 96, yeah, these are two.
All right, okay, that answers that question. And then the other question is, it's more of a concept question. We've had a number of driveways where we put stone on the side and we say, you know, to have the driveway drain.
Yep.
Practically speaking, from your engineering perspective, what percent of a driveway that's 25 feet wide, is it reasonable, is going to flow? Can it be constructed in such a way?
It can be, as long as it's pitched that way, it's all on how it's constructed, yeah.
Because, I mean, I have to tell you, most of the time, you know, as built, we don't get what was intended. You know, a lot of the driveways we see as built, not from you, I'm not talking about you, but I'm just saying in general, the water just, a lot of the driveway just doesn't go the way we anticipate into the stone.
Well, the other problem is that after people move in, they take the stone out.
Well, that's another issue, but so.
I think you want to make sure that you know, that
So,
dip in,
so
some kind of dip in the
where this is
driveway.
leading to, and this is a little bit of an engineering question, is what additional information needs to be put on a driveway that's 25 feet wide?
I can put spot grades on there,
Could you, so,
but they're still gonna have to build it right, you know.
oh, I understand
tell
that.
them to-
I understand that, but in lieu of having any spot grades, it kind of gets built the way they want to build it at the time, sometimes.
It can, so they need to be conscientious of it. They need to be aware that the intent of this is to grade it towards that
Yeah, so
that
putting spot
trench, 'cause
grades-
they're pretty good, the guys who do the grading are pretty good when they want to be.
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have any objection to putting a few spot grades on
They do
this?
not, nope.
Okay, I think that might alert the contractor that something's up with the pitch of the driveway.
Yep.
Okay,
A lot of towns just make sure that the entrance to the driveway is lower than the entrance to it, you know, so you have a little bit of a dip in there.
yeah,
So I'll look into see if that's feasible as
all
well.
right, all right. So you'll make
Can I
this,
just ask an addendum question on the driveway?
yes,
It seemed like the slope is generally that way.
Yeah,
I'm
but
wondering-
they have to bring up the grade around the house anyway. It's gonna be like a garage, basement lower, first floor, you know. Garage is almost split level, lack of a better word. So they'll be regrading around.
So it still makes sense to to slant the driveway that way?
Yeah, that
Rather
way-
than to have a trench on the other side?
That way we can, you know, we gotta pipe it around the house into the infiltration system as well.
right.
For there's more capacity in that infiltration system than there is in the stone. So it's also a conveyance mechanism into the infiltration system.
Okay,
Which is something we don't typically get. I mean, if the water actually can get into that trench, that's great, because then it'll also, some of it will also go to the back into the infiltration system, which is something we rarely see on a design.
right, right. Okay, is there anyone in the audience for this one at 58 Beaverbrook? So, you know how this works, probably, given what you've heard, that the next meeting will close an issue,
Understand? Yep.
okay?
December 12th?
Yes, yes. So, does he have to ask for a
Vote on that?
continuance?
Sure.
Okay, continuance till December.
All right.
We don't have a file number anyway, so.
Oh, we don't? Had another one too, they sent one out the same day, and go
All
right.
right. I don't think we did, do we? We didn't as of a couple days ago.
Check today.
No, I think Lisa checked them all this morning, and so,
All right, you need to
Were you here for that discussion on General Walker Estates?
I was not here, no.
Your name was mentioned a few times.
I just gave them plans today to file with the planning board to upgrade the drainage system.
Right, right, and we asked, we had quite a bit of discussion on it.
Yeah, Maureen filled me in a little bit.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Okay, next, notice is given that the commission will hold a public hearing during which time will take information related to a notice of intent filed by the U66 Corporation for the demolition of a commercial building and redevelopment of the site with a new building at One Wheeler Road. The proposed work would be within the riverfront area, 100-foot buffer zone to bank and bordering vegetative wetlands under the State Wetlands Protection Act and Burlington Bylaw, Article 14. The commission will review all information relative to the application and may issue an order of conditions. The application materials available in the Conservation Office for public review. Gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, go through the introductions.
My name is Jim White. I'm with the engineering firm H.W. Moore Associates. With me tonight is Mr. Dave Cowell from Hancock Associates, and the applicant and owner of the property, Mr. Dan Yu.
All right, nice to see you all.
Thank you.
Okay, so you start first, and why don't you make your presentation?
Good evening. The proposed projects for the redevelopment of the existing site at One River Road. As you know, this site has a long history of different restaurants, and then Treater, et cetera. Treater came with their building, which is why the building's the color it is today. Ski house is in there now, so it's retail. It's been retail use for the past, 10, 15 years. Before that, there were several different restaurants on the site. The proposed project will result is to demolish the existing building and build a new, much nicer looking two-story retail building. When you look at the site, this plan shows the outline of the existing building. We do have Vine Brook running along this southerly property line, and there's a wetland area on the hotel site to the west of the site. On the existing conditions, all the roof and front pavement area flows to catch basins, a piping system to a settling tank, and then out to the river. There's no stormwater infiltration and no treatment other than the tank, which really doesn't provide much treatment. The parking lot along Middlesex Turnpike was constructed about 10 years ago, and that does have an infiltration system in this location. But the rest of the site, there's no treatment or infiltration. Just to give you an idea of what the proposed project looks like, it'll be a two-story building. This parking lot is sort of on the south side, pretty much remains where it is today, this parking lot. This curb line's in the same locations the curb line is today, except on near the front entrance where the curb line pulls out further away from the river. The project designed to have a retail level on the first floor with this parking entering the retail on the first floor. This driveway slopes up, and there'll be a retail on the second level with this parking being at the second level retail use spaces. As I mentioned, the project is next to Vine Brook. Vine Brook is a river according to the Wetland Protection Act. We have indicated on this plan the 100-foot riverfront zone and the 200-foot riverfront zone. Proposed project will reduce pavement in the 100-foot riverfront zone. That's with the reduction of pavement in this area. There'll be an overall reduction of pavement in the total riverfront zone also. We are increasing pavement beyond the riverfront zone on this, but the overall is within the 200-foot is a reduction. We are not, as previously mentioned, our curb line, where it's adjacent to the Vine Brook, is no closer than it is today. We held the same curb line location. For stormwater, meeting all DEP stormwater water quality requirements. The stormwater in the parking areas will go to deep some catch basins with oil trap hoods. It'll then go to a treatment device and then to an infiltration system. So I believe we're about 90% TSS removal with our parking lot design. In addition to that, we are providing infiltration. Infiltration proposed is about 10 times greater than what is required on the DEP. In fact, we have enough infiltration that actually exceeds if the site was originally not paved. As you know, the DEP regulations is they're increasing pavement. Even if we don't take into account the pavement that's on site today, this infiltration exceeds that amount of infiltration. So we far exceed what is required and what, what would be there if there was nothing on the site today. So we have two infiltration systems, one up in the upper level, one in the lower level. They both connect to each other, and they both connect to the existing drain pipe that discharges to Vine Brook. However, the infiltration systems are so large, most storms, there won't be any discharge. Most storms will just be infiltrating into the ground.
So that's an overflow pipe, essentially.
Basically, it is. So that'll take the large storm events. Most storms just infiltrate back into the ground. That's the existing pipe.
Since you're on the drainage, could you just give a little bit more detail on the routing of a parking lot versus the roof, where it goes,
Sure.
just to be clear?
Sure. So the roof drain, we do have the roof drain coming out, and it does go through the infiltration system prior to the treatment device prior to entering the large infiltration system. This infiltration system, the upper level one just takes parking lot. The roof and the lower parking lot is in the lower infiltration system. And the water quality device was designed, the size of it was based on the total area going to it.
So the parking lot and the roof drain are combined?
Yes.
Okay. And, okay, we'll keep going. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah. I mean, we can separate them, but we sized it to be able to handle both. So if you want it, no, we can easily separate the two and have the roof drain going into the infiltration system by itself. That's not it.
We'll get to discussion.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. I think that's about it.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. Dave Cowles here. You'd like to say a couple words about our work in the
Oh, sure, I can speak to that. David Cowell, I'm a senior wetland scientist with Hancock Associates. As a commercial site, a lot of our work constitutes redevelopment. On page 2 of the handouts, I think that's the easiest to reference, is I provided a summary table that helps illustrate our changes in impervious surface area on the site. So in the existing condition right now, there's 59,100 square feet of impervious surface area, and the net reduction of impervious surface area in the riverfront area will be 739 square feet. And it's important to note that we're reducing impervious surface area by 1,128 square feet in the inner 100-foot riparian zone, and we have a net increase of 389 feet in the outer 100-foot to 100 to 200-foot riverfront area. And ultimately, it reduces impervious surface area by 700 square feet. With that, I entertain any questions.
Okay, so why don't we go to our staff? John, are you taking the lead in this one?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, first I have a question about the existing condition. What does the tank do, the existing tank?
That's the old way of doing. That's the old way of doing stormwater treatment.
It was
It was
treatment,
just,
it
it was just a
wasn't
settling tank. It was like a big septic tank. So Stormwater went in, it had a settling time in there, and it flowed out. So
It wasn't
many-
for detention, it was.
No detention. Many years ago, that's the way Burlington did there, before the
Okay.
water quality standards came out. That's
Okay,
what Burlington did.
so first I'll speak to the stormwater. So the stormwater system, I would agree with Larry, probably the rooftop shouldn't go through the proprietary separator. It's just putting more clean water in there and
It also makes it less efficient because it's based on low flow is when it works. And so putting the larger flow in just makes it a little less efficient.
Okay, yeah, it's no problem.
So, the infiltration systems sound good, so the one on the upper parking lot on the west side of the lot, the overflow of that, I don't know if Mr. White said that, but that one, the overflow of that one then goes down into the larger infiltration chamber below. So if there's overflow from that one, it goes into.
The one on the left-hand side of the
Yeah.
lot, right? It overflows into the one on the right.
Correct, yeah. So one question I have about the infiltration systems is, they're all sort of based on assumed soil information. You didn't do any test pits?
I've been involved with the site for about 25 years. I was out there during construction of the restaurant that was put in there. I was out there during the construction of the tank that we just talked about and the catch basins. Then I was out there during the construction of the current building with all the excavation that went on through there. So although we didn't submit any test pits, I've had quite a bit of experience with the soils on the site. Since it's a ongoing retail use, we really rather not bring a backhoe in there and start digging up the parking lot at this time. We were very comfortable with what we saw out there. We know about where the groundwater is. It's about 10 feet down. It's all pretty clean, actually pretty gravel out there.
So if you started tearing the site up and the soils aren't what you're expecting and you had to move the location, you'd have to file for an amendment.
Yes, I'd be happy if you put as part of the conditions that we have to file soil testing results before we start construction. I don't have an issue with that. It's just we don't want to go in there at this time with people, with retail people in there and start digging up the parking lot. As I said, I've been out there for 25 years and I've witnessed a lot of excavations and it's been no ledge and no water found in any of them.
John, how does that sound to you?
I guess it's okay. I'm not sure what the Board of Health is going to say on their comments to the planning board regarding this, but, yeah, we can certainly put in a condition that they can't really do any, even demolition of the existing building until the test pits have been done and the drainage, the infiltration system will perform as proposed.
Yes,
So we can condition that.
yeah, thank you.
So then there's resource areas, so there's wetlands off to the northeast, off-site, they're not flagged. I looked at them on GIS, so the approximate location looks fairly accurate. So there's this upland area. It's actually owned by the hotel property, between the site and that wetland, and I think there is some runoff from the site. I think that's one of the discharges. There's some overland flow off your site into that area as well, correct?
Yeah, a little bit.
So, and then as to riverfront performance standards, so that, I didn't notice an alternatives analysis. Was there?
I think it's in,
Was there one?
There's a paragraph in the
Well,
title
oh, yeah.
that doesn't really discuss any alternatives.
yeah, right.
So that should be beefed up. And then the improvements in the riverfront area need to be more spelled out. So I think with the proposed improvements are the reduction in pavement, so the green space as you pull into the driveway right there on your right is increased. not substantially. So I think the total reduction in impervious is like 780 square feet, or something like that, total between inner and outer riparian. It's like 1,100, I think, in the inner, but then there's an increase in impervious in the outer. So it's a pretty small reduction in imperviousness. So it's up to the commission whether or not you want to try to get more improvements in the riverfront area. I don't know. So that curb line is being maintained. Is it possible to bump it out?
Yeah, let's
increase?
talk about that. I was going to bring that up too. All right, any other comments? All right, so where do we want to start? How about Indra, any
Yeah.
questions?
Can you show those two infiltration system, the catchment area, how much or where the water or system coming?
Under proposed conditions or existing conditions?
No, the proposed.
Proposed? Under proposed conditions, all pavement areas will flow to the drainage system. We do capture a small amount of water right here off Route 95, the grass area. That goes into, right now, that flows onto the site, so we're going to capture that and bring it in. But other than that, everything here goes away from the site. Off pavement goes, and the south side goes to a river. Off pavement here, I believe this is a little bit of green goes in on here, and there's a little bit that goes away from the site. So mostly it's mostly the on-site drainage. We pick up a little, as I said, pick up a little bit off the I-95 site. And, all our pavement, all our roof goes into our infiltration system.
Is there a small amount of driveway runoff that's gonna go into the Wheeler Road? Is that pitching that way?
It's pitching that way, but we install. It pitches toward a catch basin, a proposed catch basin. Right now.
Okay, I see the catch
Yeah,
basin, yeah.
Right
okay, I
now,
understand.
it does go out into the street, but we're minimizing that amount with the catch basin.
And since this is the riverfront area, so we need to see some more improvement in the riverfront area. We need to see some more improvement, yes.
Let's talk a little bit more detail maybe about that. How about, does anyone in the commission have any comments on what can be done?
I don't know, like along the area where Vine Brook is there a,
Right.
area to like do some planting there to,
Well, there's a couple of things. One is the mulch right to the bank.
yeah, so
Okay.
it'd be nice not to do that.
So it would be nice not to do that and restore it as a functional riverfront area.
Yeah,
The other is, and I read it off of the plan, that in the parking spaces, between the end of one parking space to the opposite one, it looks like about 25 feet. So is it possible to reclaim maybe 5 feet or 8 feet of riverfront area and then let it go to a natural state? In other words, reuse the sloped concrete. It looks like it's in good condition. The asphalt isn't, but you would cut down on the amount of pavement. It looks like you could pull back riverfront area and your new asphalt paving would be a little less costly because you don't have as much asphalt to do. And you'd still have enough so people could back up and not lose any spaces.
I mean, now the parking lot bay width, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, the distance between the end of one parking lot to the beginning on the other side, it looks like 25 feet.
It's 24 feet.
Oh, I guessed right. I used my precise measuring stick. So you think that could be trimmed a little and not compromise any parking spaces and reclaim some of the riverfront area?
24 is pretty common in retail use. I mean, often we go down where bumpers can overhang, we reduce that by a couple of feet. So we can certainly look at, we're not going to gain a lot, but we can look at gaining a couple of feet on that.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll have to,
anything you could do and not lose your parking spaces, obviously, I mean, I'm sure you would object to that, but.
yeah. Yeah, we can look at that. As long as the planning board is in agreement, we could do it. We can look at narrowing that down a little bit. We didn't talk about, in the area there, we're removing the pavement, we are planting 3 trees 3 maple trees, and we are using wildflower seed mixing to stabilize the disturbed areas, and that will go back to its natural state. So we are providing some improvement.
I mean, I think we would ask them not to
Mulch.
mulch anymore,
Yeah.
because that, I mean, that's,
It'd be better to put the seed mix and maybe some shrubs if there's room along there.
No, you don't want, okay, you don't want,
No, along where the river is,
It's
along the
close to the,
riverbank.
close to the river, on
okay.
top of the bank.
I think where we had the mulch was in between, we have a retaining wall here.
I mean, we're trying to create a functional riverfront area. When you mulch it right up to the bank, it's not really serving the purpose that, at least the habitat purpose, it doesn't serve that purpose anymore.
Well, I can tell you to the mulch area that I definitely have seen through snow removal and plowing, they put that snow on top of that mulch. It's plowed right over it, so they do pile it there. I think that's probably why the mulch is the way it is.
So that's something we need to see is what your, snow removal plan is, your cleaning of the parking lot, that, that should be, the operation and manual should be.
I believe, we do have an operation maintenance in the,
But is there, on the plan, does it show where the snow storage is gonna, are you gonna remove it from site?
hold on.
Is it in here?
Notice it.
Yeah, I'm not sure we noticed.
No, I don't think it's on the plan with the
Okay.
snow storage. We can certainly provide a snow
And I
storage
don't think we
plan.
have the O and M plan.
Yeah, there was one.
There was one?
It's in the
It's
stormwater
part of the
report.
big-
Yeah, it's the stormwater report.
They might have gone through that because that's a lot of numbers.
I looked at it on my phone. This is like,
Yeah.
Okay, are there more comments? Bill, do you have comments?
Just looking at the planting plan, along the whole Middlesex Turnpike edge, it seems like there's an awful lot of mulch. That whole area, if I'm reading the shading guides correctly, that's all mulch all the way along there,
Or just if there's
with a few trees.
Yes, we're trying to avoid putting lawns in,
Two or
because
two
lawns
acres.
require spare.
But is there room to
irrigation.
put more plants in there? I mean, it's hard for me to see that you're only talking 6 trees on the entire site.
three of them are,
It's-
three
it's
of them are
6 trees.
non-native.
3 of them are non-native, ginkgos, that's right. So, I mean, I'd like to see more enhanced planting where, if it's possible.
Okay. We can certainly look at that.
Yeah, we can revisit that.
Yeah, and this building gonna have a flat roof?
Yes.
Have you any thought to solar panels or a green roof or something to help trend towards a net zero? Hopefully your building's gonna last for 50 years, and we're gonna need some carbon help in those 50-year time period.
Yes, we have thought about solar, and we're looking into that. Unfortunately, since it's 2 levels, it's not quite as easy as if it's 1 level, because now you get twice as much mechanical equipment on the roof. But we're certainly looking into seeing if solar is available. for this
Probably know there's substantial financial incentive for solar nowadays.
project. Yes, I've done numerous solar panel work.
Okay, I'd like you to see what you can do on this site as well, because we need, carbon help we can get, I think, from the sounds of what I hear.
Okay, Ed, anything?
Just that one thing I mentioned,
Okay,
with the whole snow removal
yeah, we got that,
situation.
we got that down,
Yeah.
yep. Do I interpret this drawing correctly that you're going to look at separating the roof runoff?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and the those are not detention areas, they're infiltration, right?
They're both.
They're both?
They're both. The lower portion of it, below the outlet pipe, is infiltration. Then above the outlet pipe is retention.
Detention, so you have a control.
I'm sorry, detention.
Detention, so you have a controlled outlet.
Yes.
Okay.
So, can you help educate me, if we separate out the rooftop, separating it from what, from the water quality treatment unit?
From the separator. They have like a storm tech or something.
Yes.
Doesn't need to
Okay,
go in.
but it would still, so it would just bypass that and
It
still
can still
go
go
into the
infiltrator.
Okay.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Are those infiltration detention, is that, they have isolator rows in them? Is that what the shading is?
Yes, it is.
It is, okay. And they both have inspection ports and can be cleaned?
Yes,
They isolate a row?
yes.
Okay. yeah. That's all I have, actually.
I have a
Anything
couple more
else?
questions about the stormwater. So could we have a detail of the hydrodynamic separator? So there was something about it in the stormwater report, but there wasn't anything on the plans that actually identified the model.
Which one we're going to be using? Sure, we can provide that
Yeah,
information.
and the spec sheet from the New Jersey reviewer, I mean,
Yeah,
without knowing the model number, it's pretty hard to actually verify.
yeah,
I suspect that you're overstating the TSS removal for that unit, but you really only need 44% TSS removal prior to infiltration, so we can certainly let that slide.
Is that in DEP regs, the stormwater regs?
Yes. So, yeah, you just, prior to infiltration, you need to do 44% in a critical area, which this is.
I see, okay.
so we far exceeding that, the
Yeah,
44.
yeah. So, and then the other thing is, there's inconsistencies in the filing between the notice of intent and the stormwater report as to whether or not that this is a redevelopment project. Several times in the stormwater report, it says it's not a redevelopment because there's an increase in impervious. But the notice of intent says that there's a reduction in impervious. And I certainly think, as far as riverfront area goes, it's a redevelopment project. And you're meeting the standards anyway, but I just want to point out that there's some inconsistencies in different parts of the filing as to the status of what type of filing it is.
Yeah, it's difficult when you read what's a redevelopment project, what exactly they count as, at one location it says, no, if you're increasing impervious, it's not, but then in the riverfront area, we're actually decreasing, so
Right.
it's like,
The difference between whether or not there's classifications for riverfront or redevelopment as it pertains to riverfront versus redevelopment as it pertains to stormwater management standards? Because, I mean, it's clearly redevelopment as it pertains to riverfront.
yeah, yes.
And I think it is for stormwater as well, because it's a reduction in pavement.
All right, so does this require any difference in engineering?
No,
This is semantics, then?
I
Well,
suppose.
it's
No.
clarity and it's consistency in the report.
All right.
I have one other question. I noticed there was some flood zone designation on the drawings. Does that affect this project at all, or any considerations?
So they actually depicted the FEMA blob on there, as well as showing where the actual elevation is. So there's a difference, and he showed both. Neither one is on the site, is within the work footprint, though.
It's not, okay.
Right, we're not working it.
Okay, the minutes should show there's no one in the audience for this, okay?
Sure.
What?
Sure.
I don't think he's,
He's on our project team.
that's right. Yes, I assumed that. He had a smile on his face, he didn't seem dissatisfied.
Guilty look.
All right,
Before we adjourn, can I just ask one point of clarification on the riverfront alternatives analysis? Just in terms of what additional information you want. We did provide a riverfront alternatives analysis, and one of the issues that we have is that the riverfront area encompasses 59,700 square feet of the property, and of that 59,700 square feet in the existing condition, 59,100 square feet of the surface area is already impervious surface area. So there's only 600 square feet that's not impervious surface area in the riverfront area, and that's located closer to the actual river itself than what's there. So it's, I mean, every inch out there, aside from 600 square feet, is already impervious surface area.
Is it clear that is the building closer or the same distance from the river?
That's just
It's
it, I
really-
mean, right, there's really no opportunity, and I'm certainly happy to beef up the language at your request, but I'm just looking for direction of what language to carry. We don't have opportunity to push.
yeah, typically, what we've seen from DEP, they seem to want more for an alternative analysis if it was appealed.
Right.
Okay, not that this is going to be appealed, but they seem to be, they ask for, why can't the footprint be smaller and the building higher, then you hit some zoning regulation.
Zoning constraints are, right, yep.
So, I'm not suggesting you do that, I'm suggesting that the write-up could address why the footprint can't be smaller and the building can't be higher.
Economic sustainability, zoning constraints as well. that have-
Right, and there are zoning and there's lot line constraints and things like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I
No,
did want to
please.
say that we are actually reducing the footprint. The footprint right now is 18,000 square feet.
Yes,
And so we're actually reducing it down to 11,000 square feet. The building is now 20,000 square feet, the existing space, 18 on the first, 2 on the mezzanine. We're reducing that down to 11 on the first floor and 11 on the second floor. So the
footprint is
footprint is
small- the footprint is
significantly
smaller.
smaller now.
he
much
should
smaller.
write that up then. That way it's the least impact alternative, and you can say that's how you arrived at that, from what you have now. And I think that would be more meaningful.
Okay, I'm comfortable doing that, yeah.
Sure.
That's good.
And is it,
Good point, sir.
No, I wanted to say that the project we're doing here is really not about density, because current leasable square feet is about 20,000. We're increasing to about 22. This project is all about raising the visibility to the same level as Middlesex Turnpike, and so that's hence the 2 levels on a much smaller footprint. And so we're spending a lot of money just to, about the same square footage, and a lot of regrading, but just to elevate it, so.
Understood, right.
We're trying to be, make it reasonable.
Okay, that makes a good story for an alternative analysis.
Great, yep, good.
Thanks.
Okay,
One thing to point on that note too, I understand that our DEP issue hasn't been issued yet. I spoke to Northeast Region yesterday, they've confirmed that the check has cleared revenue, that the application's been received. So we're anticipating that hopefully the DEP file number will be filed or issued prior to our next hearing. And of course, if DEP has any comments on this, we'll address those as well.
right. So let's go over the list perhaps. I have a list here, and let me run through it and see if it's the same as your list.
Sure.
Okay, we're going to bypass the separator, the roof is going to bypass the separator directly into the infiltration. That will, I guess, we are going to condition the test pits will be done prior to the start of construction. So you don't have to do anything with that. Alternative analysis, we just talked about. We need some information on snow removal and keeping it away from the riverfront area, the bank particularly. You're going to look at, and anything you can do, and this would be appreciated, is move the asphalt back from the riverfront. Am I going too fast?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Boyven asked for a more enhanced planting plan.
Yes.
And Mr. Boyven, I think, asked about solar panels. You're gonna look at that. And John asked for a detail and model number of the hydrodynamic separator. Is there anything else?
So did you have in there, I might have missed it, to kind of trying to pull back from
You said that.
Vinebrook
Yeah.
and increase planting there, kind of?
You said that. So part of that, then, probably you need, when do you meet with the planning board again?
It's December. I think they only meet once in December. I think we're meeting with them in December.
You don't meet with them again this month? I think they have still
Next
another
week?
meeting this month.
Next week,
Yeah.
No, I think we decided to wait because we wanted to see how this went. so
Okay,
I'll make
because one of the
plans.
issues about pulling the pavement back would then be the width, the passage, two-way traffic in there. If the planning board's going to say, no, that's too narrow, we'd want to hear from them, obviously, whether or not.
Would you communicate to Kristen about it?
Okay.
Please, because that way she can explain it to the board if you're not at that meeting.
Yep.
Why we're asking, the importance of the riverfront.
Is it two-way traffic, or is it intended to go around the building?
Well,
and
it
come
can
up?
be, in the front parking lot can be two-way. Where it goes around, it's one-way. The city's town zoning does not specify, I don't believe specifies the width of that drive lane. They do specify the parking space sizes, so we know we have to maintain the parking lot, parking space size, but I don't believe they specify the width of the.
Just seems like 20 feet would be enough for 2 cars to pass.
Well, that's plenty for 2 cars. It's maneuvering in and out of a parking spot. The narrower you have it, the just more difficult it is to maneuver into a parking spot.
Well, let's see what they say. Maybe planning will go along with it.
Okay.
What do you say?
The meeting in December is
Okay. Okay, good, thank you.
When is the next time you meet? Is that the 5th?
December 12th.
December 12th.
Great.
A week later.
Is it possible we'll be in a position to issue at the next meeting, you think, if these issues get cleared up?
I would assume so, yeah.
So if planning is okay, and we're on the same page as them, we could possibly issue on the 12th for you. Okay?
We have to go back to the planning.
Well, hopefully we'll straighten out.
All right, so if there's nothing further, we'll get the material ahead of time, and then we'll see you on the 12th.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. Sure. Okay. Next on the agenda, planning board comments. We just talked about the one-wheeler road, right? Should we issue formal comments, or you want to, a letter or something, or you just talk to Kristen?
Probably both,
Okay.
because we'll let them know that we don't have any other substantial issues, some
Right.
minor issues.
All right. Do we have planning board comments for anything else?
No.
No. Okay, subcommittee and staff reports? Okay, upcoming meetings, December 12th and January 9th.
Should be good.
Other business?
I think I distributed by email the notification from Eversource about the access road construction. So that's just an FYI, but that's all the roads under all the power lines in town. So all of the Eversource right-of-way, they're going to be doing road work.
Yeah, so I actually saw, this was not a road work, I was coming down Fox Hill the other day, and a guy just in a Jeep, just drove down there, just flying down, just a resident.
So they've been doing so much work there that the gates are probably not being
A lot of
closed.
the gates are never closed,
Yeah.
even when they're not working.
Yeah.
But
And we don't have any controls over what they do we?
No, so they basically notify us, they give us maps that show where the wetlands are, so if we have
They
any
know where
reason
the-
to think, I mean, they've been doing this for years, so
kind of
they've had the
threatened
map.
and endangered species stuff.
Yeah, they've got all that stuff mapped. They put down mats in the cases of when they need to cross wetlands, although this is strictly road work, so they shouldn't be doing that. So besides this is Eversource. Today, there were also several emails about the Tennessee gas pipeline that goes through the landlocked forest, and they're doing maintenance work up there, which I couldn't find the notification for.
Goes through Sawmill too, doesn't it? Down
It would be a different line,
okay.
yeah. I couldn't find the notification, but they're doing vegetation management up there, and so there was a lot of upset people about some of the cutting up there, just as there have been in the past when Eversource did it along their power lines. So you may hear stuff about it. It's not conservation land, obviously, it's selectmen's land, but there are wetlands up there as well, so. I spoke to the Lexington Conservation Administrator today about it because they're heading down towards Lexington, so, where they do have conservation land. She was gonna go check it out this afternoon and get back to me.
I mean, when Eversource clears the land, don't their regulations provide that they don't have to cut things that are not gonna grow beyond a certain height? But I get the impression they don't care, they just clear it.
They'll leave shrubs.
Will they?
But not trees, yeah.
They're not
They
into,
tend to like just whack it all down.
that's the impression I get, that they just cut it all down.
Usually when they've done a cut.
They certainly can, I mean, they're not required to leave
Yeah, I don't see
anything.
shrubs when after they're done.
Yeah, around the wetlands, sometimes they'll leave shrubs, because they don't take their machinery into the wetlands,
The
but,
same thing up with the gas line, they usually just,
right. Yeah.
Was there something about jumbo storage too?
Okay, oh, yes, yeah, thanks for the reminder. So, that, I emailed that out. So DEP, issued their timely superseding order of conditions.
It's only, what, a year and a half late?
Right. So it's an order, a superseding order of conditions allowing the project. There were some changes, some of which we knew they were gonna have to make because they had not done test pits until after the order of conditions closed. There was some additional riverfront area alteration that they permitted to do some floodplain compensation. So Jumbo had proposed to over-excavate in some areas so that they wouldn't have to cut as many of the few trees that were in the riverfront. And DEP said, well, no, technically you have to do each increment, so that meant cutting trees and doing some
So
additional
that's the reason
excavation.
why there was an additional compensation area?
Yeah,
Because they wanted it more precisely at elevation?
right, yeah.
Were you aware of that that was a possibility?
I had forgotten about it. Originally I knew about it, but I forgot about it like a year ago. So. And additional, as Larry sort of referenced, they did ask them to do a more detailed alternatives analysis, which they did. They did the formality, and then DEP said, okay, fine, this is the site for this, so,
That was it?
yeah.
So,
So that has, much like an order of conditions, that has a 10 business day appeal period, of which we're roughly halfway through now. I think it was mailed last Thursday or Friday, so we're about halfway through. And that, if that were to be appealed, it would go to an adjudicatory hearing.
Are any of the conditions that DEP uses, are they substantially different than what we do?
Not substantially, but they didn't use our orders. In the past, I've seen times when they just basically reissued the order. This time, they sort of seem to have their own boilerplate conditions that they sort of used.
But nothing
Customized them a little bit.
that we can borrow from them for the future, it's all.
There's a couple conditions in there that were kind of interesting that I thought.
If you happen to notice, could you send me the reference numbers, which numbers?
Okay.
Just curious.
So then, if it's not appealed, we will have to then reconcile the bylaw decision, because our bylaw decision references the specific conditions in the order of conditions. So we'll have to amend that somehow, maybe administratively, so that it'll reference the conditions in the superseding order. It's a different number of conditions. I mean, it really should, since we don't list all the conditions out again in our bylaw decision that are in the order, we just reference order of conditions.
We need to amend it for a different reference.
Yeah, yeah, hopefully we can just do that administratively and not have an amendment, which could then be appealed by somebody.
Right. Okay, we all set?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor? 500. 9:10 is not bad, a big agenda.